We are already in for another game-breaking patch, so get ready for a whole new type of game. The Orisa nerfs were already enough to make a ton of heroes viable again, and now we're getting even more radical changes for mid-season 10. So let's get started with the major changes, and there are some big ones this time. If you're looking to improve on the top heroes or even just your favorite ones, use the link in the description to get access to a Game Leap membership. There are tons of guides and courses that can help you get better, faster. First up, we have the tank passive receiving straight buffs. It had two features before, knockback resistance as well as feeding less ult charge, and now it's been upgraded to have an even higher knockback resistance, from 30% all the way up to 50%. It's already really hard to boop tanks, so forget about sending them off the map ever again. Even with Lucio's increased movement lockout duration, it's not going to be enough. A tank has to be way overextended or way too close to the edge to be punishable at all. Tanks are definitely going to feel pretty strong with this change, on top of a new third addition to the passive, headshot damage resistance. All headshot damage tanks take is now reduced by 25%. The tank passive is pretty stacked right now. Taking less damage from all headshots is just amazing overall, especially for the tanks with extra big head hitboxes. Winston, Orisa, and Roadhog come to mind. Reducing headshot damage is always a pretty touchy subject. Illari and Sojourn with their 1.5 times headshot multiplier instead of double damage can feel pretty bad. And now it's going to be everyone dealing reduced headshot damage to tanks. We'll have to see how it pans out, especially combined with the next change, but this time to the HP regen passive for all roles. It now benefits tanks more because it's now calculated differently. It's not a flat rate of 20 heals per second anymore, but instead 5% of max health per second plus 10 health per second. For most heroes at 250 HP, that's now 22.5 heals per second, but it's massively better for tanks. Doom and Queen at 525 HP get 36 heals per second, while Reinhardt and Wrecking Ball on the upper side of the health pool get 45 and 49 heals per second. Tanks do take a lot more damage than everybody else, so it makes sense that they can regen more health relative to their health pool. But on the other hand, it does have some really high potential, especially for the dive tanks that can leave and rejoin a fight quickly to go for the clutch. Wrecking Ball has some crazy buffs coming to make his engage even stronger, and with how much healing he can get during rotations now, you'll be able to engage even more often. But on top of how impactful this new passive is, we're still not done with the global changes, because we have one final critical adjustment to armor. When Overwatch 2 launched, it changed from the Overwatch 1 version of reducing incoming damage by up to 5 per projectile with a maximum of 50% damage reduced to a flat rate of 30% damage reduced. It made armor more consistent overall, but after 10.5 seasons, no more. We're back to the old armor, which makes smaller instances of damage a lot worse, and that affects a lot of heroes, and ironically, mostly tanks. Even though they're the heroes who actually have the armor, tanks deal low enough damage that the new 5 damage reduction affects them the most. The big losers to this change are heroes like Wrecking Ball, D.Va, Tracer, and Reaper. An interesting mix of good and bad heroes right now, but with armor back to its classic Overwatch 1 state, things can quickly change. Some high damage DPS are going to be a lot better, on top of some pretty interesting new buffs they're getting in this patch. But first we've got to get into the actual changes. Starting with the tanks, they've got new armor and 2 improved passives just for them, along with some pretty crazy buffs. First is Junker Queen, with what's basically a minor rework. Starting simple, her commanding shout cooldown has been reduced from 14 seconds to 12, giving her more of a chance to have it available twice in a fight instead of once. It's still pretty long though, considering the cooldown still only starts at the end of the shout's 5-second duration. It's still a pretty solid buff, especially combined with a nice quality of life improvement. You can now use shout during your other abilities, which mostly affects Carnage and Rampage. It won't exactly help her go harder with her engage, since shouting at the start of your Carnage is already better to close distance with, but it does help recover from unexpected burst damage while going for a slash. Before, you would just get locked out of everything until the animation ended, but now you can always shout. It's probably going to be more valuable for your ultimate though, because now you can completely min-max it. Using your shout before going for the ult was safer because it guaranteed you wouldn't get burst down, but it also meant that you would waste some of the shout duration while traveling with your Rampage. But thanks to this change, not anymore. Now you can just shout while dashing during your ultimate. Not only does it help your own health management, but you can also shout your teammates at all times now. It's one of the abilities that really needs timing to shine, so it's a good thing that it's more available now, on top of coming up more often with the decreased cooldown. Next up, we have a surprise buff for Sigma, and it's pretty nuts. Gravitic Flux no longer needs line of sight at all. You can hit people through walls and even from different rooms with this change. This change is definitely more bad than good, because there's no longer any way to position around the ultimate with cover. If you don't have mobility, you're screwed. Hitting a successful Gravitic Flux in the current state of the game is admittedly harder than before, but it's also one of the easiest ultimates to confirm a hit with. Even with several options available to counter it, this kind of change just reinforces needing heroes like Kiriko and Baptiste to save you from an otherwise uncounterable ultimate. It shouldn't make Sigma drastically better, but it's definitely a good buff, so make sure to have your stuns and immo abilities ready when against them from now on. Next up are the expected Wrecking Ball upgrades, and they're just straight stat buffs. Firstly, his grapple fireball damage has been increased from 50 to 60. Going for mass team boops is now a little more enticing, but it's also just free extra damage on his normal engage. Wrecking Ball is getting closer to the harder carry style he had back in Overwatch 1, and the Fireball into Piledriver Engage is even better with an increase in the Slam's movement lockout duration. We have a crazy Piledriver buff, as it's gone from 0.5 to 0.75 seconds. That quarter of a second increase in the time you're locked in the same knocked up position is pretty significant. Thanks to the tank knockback reduction, the enemy tank will never be sent up very far anymore at all, but damage and supports are free pickings. Hitting a Slam at all now is very much worth it. The last time the movement lockout duration was higher than 0.5, the Piledriver was also on a 10-second cooldown. Now it's the best it's been in a long time, and only on 8 seconds. Multiple high-value engages on ball are very possible when not against a hard counter comp. And that's not all, because honestly, with Queen getting a lot better and Cassidy being as strong as always, it's not much easier to play Wrecking Ball, but now his Minefield engages are a lot stronger with an increase in both damage and knockback effect. Each mine has been buffed by 35 damage for a total of 165 per mine. At 130 damage before, it was enough to 2-tap most targets, but now it's a lot more effective for both against tanks and for really making a massive dent in anyone's health bar even if they only hit one mine. The knockback effect has also been increased, making the mines even more effective. The knockback has been doubled, so you can easily get sent flying or into another mine for an instant kill. It may not help him engage much harder, but he's definitely got a final gambit in his pocket for winning fights even against counter comps. And for the final tank on the list, apparently both gravity-based ultimates are getting buffs. Zarya's Grav now has a longer duration and range. It got nerfed from 4 seconds to 3.5 in early Overwatch 2 when she was a bit stronger, but now it's right back to 4 again. Definitely a necessary change, since even when she's good, there are easy ways to handle the Grav. Zarya herself isn't great at following up on it with her low max ammo, so the extra half second should really help it be more effective when you actually get the hit. And for the range, the radius has been increased from 6 to 7, giving the ultimate a better chance at catching more players. This isn't as insane as the Gravitic Flux change and is pretty reasonable. It should make Zarya feel a lot better at closing fights, but it still doesn't make her less reliant on Zarya-centric compositions that make the best use of her bubbles. In the normal matchups, she can still get out-tempoed easily, but now it's time for the DPS buffs, and we expected some light changes to Junkrat, Echo, and Hanzo, and although some of them are light, the first buff to Junkrat has some pretty heavy impact. His primary fire grenade damage has been buffed. It now deals 5 more impact damage for a total of 125 on direct hits, so now he can 2-tap with primary fire again, just about right at 250. In close range, this will be pretty insane to deal with, because up until now, we've only had to deal with Junkrat's massive grenade hitbox when it took 3 shots to kill. Now it's back to 2, making him somehow even more lethal in close quarters. He doesn't have his insta-kill combo back, because his concussion mines still only deal a maximum of 120 damage. Combined with the single grenade, that's a total of 245 damage, which is just missing that last 5. But this is intentional. He'll be stronger in the neutral matchup while still missing that crucial instant one-shot. With no fall-off, he can even find more kills cross-map with this buff, so it's definitely a change worth respecting. Next, we've got the light Echo buff, and although it's definitely more light, Echo's already pretty strong, and now our ultimate game multiplier in her duplicate has been increased from 4 to 4.5. That's a pretty nice change. It's been exactly a year now since she got her duplicate change to reduce that bonus from 5.5 to 4 in exchange for a 25% reduced ultimate cost. At first, it felt like an okay change, but it pretty expectedly made it a lot less consistent to farm an ultimate with your copy. Now it'll be a lot easier, as that extra 0.5 charging multiplier will bring you over the ultimate threshold all those times that you're so close to getting your copied ultimate. Getting that second power spike during your ultimate Echo dive is really important and now a lot more feasible. And for the third light buff, this time for Hanzo, it's another ultimate upgrade. Hanzo's Dragon Strike now flies faster with an increased speed from 12 to 15 meters per second. It's always been a pretty lackluster ultimate, but this has some pretty good potential. It's a 25% speed increase, making those dragons fly decently fast. It's always been best when catching players off guard, and that extra speed might be what it takes. This change does reduce the time you can zone an area for, but I definitely prefer being able to actually confirm kills instead of having the 2 mighty spirit dragons be reduced to clearing an angle for 3 seconds. That covers it for the DPS buffs, with just one small tiny support change to carry the whole roll, and it's going to be Brig. Unfortunately, it's not anything crazy, although it does improve Brig's ultimate pressure. Using Rally now resets her shield bash cooldown, so it'll always be ready for the stun effect at the start of your ultimate. This also means Brig can be a lot more aggressive with her rally push, bashing close, then ulting and bashing again for the team stun. Because of how decent her stun is combined with the massive shield, it wouldn't be too bad, but she's still not the most tanky in her ultimate. At least she gets the value out of the new armor, so tanks and flankers are going to struggle more to kill her compared to before. And that's it for the mid-season patch of Season 10. It's another rough go for the supports with only a minor Brig change, but I guess tanks are getting a really big overhaul in exchange. If you're looking to improve on the top heroes or even just your favorite ones, use the link in the description to get access to a GameLeap membership. There are tons of guides and courses that can help you get better, faster. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.